This video will be a walkthrough for the EC2 Basics lab that I introduced in the previous video. I hope you did well, but if you ran into any roadblocks or if you just want to see how I do it on my end, then feel free to continue. Now, the first task in this lab was to create an EC2 instance of any type. So let's do that by going to Services and navigating to Instance. And then from the dashboard, I'll click Launch Instance. Now remember, it can be any type, and I didn't designate an AMI that you have to use, so hopefully you felt free to use any of the free tier eligible or just any AMI that you want to. I'm going to choose the Amazon Linux 2 AMI. Once again, the type doesn't matter, so I'm going to stick with the T2 Micro here because it's free tier eligible. So I'll click Configure Instance Details. Now, we didn't make any specifications for the VPC, so I'm going to feel free to leave it in the default VPC. I'm also going to let the solution decide which subnet it's deployed into, and then I'm going to hit Add Storage. Now, the default settings for the EBS are fine. I'm totally fine with general purpose SSD, and I'm certainly not going to need more than 8 GB of storage for the solution, so I'm going to go to Add Tags. You know what, just for organization purposes, I am going to go ahead and give it a tag here, name, and we'll call it Basics Lab. And now for security group. So, if you'll recall, the second goal for this lab was to associate the instance with a security group that only allows SSH access from my IP address. So, I'm going to create a new security group, and the default name is fine. And then I'm only going to add one rule. So SSH, and then the source, I'm going to set it to my IP. Description, we'll just call it Matt SSH access. And there it is. That's all that's required for that second step. We're going to give it a security group that only allows SSH access from my IP address. And we'll hit Review and Launch, and then Launch. So I'm going to go ahead and use a key pair that I've already created, and I'll launch the instance. And that's going to take just a moment. In the meantime, I'll click View Instances, and I'll just take a moment to review the server that I've created. So it looks like it successfully got that security group that we created, which was Launch Wizard 3. We should see for outbound rules, outbound everything, and for inbound rules, we should see that SSH rule that we configured for the security group. We'll also see that it currently has a public DNS name and an IPv4 public IP, and that's because it's deployed into a public subnet in the default VPC. And it looks like that instance is done deploying, so I'm going to go ahead and try to connect to it just to verify that that security group I set up is working the way it's supposed to. So let's copy the connect command there, and let's head to a terminal. And then in the directory that I have that key pair, I'm going to run that command, and hopefully I'll connect to an instance here. And it did. So we were successfully able to use our key pair and that security group rule that we configured to SSH into this instance. So I'll go ahead and exit out. And then, just to test our security group again, notice that we don't have any inbound rules for internet traffic. So there's nothing over port 80 or port 443. So if I try to navigate to the public DNS, this shouldn't work. And it looks like we're right. Because we haven't given it any internet access, it's going to time out. So that security group is working just like we expect it to. The next step was to create a snapshot of the EBS attached to the instance, because we're going to use that snapshot to create a new Amazon machine image. So because we're already on the instance page, an easy way to do this is I'm going to copy the instance ID, and then I'm going to head over to Elastic Block Store Volumes. And you'll notice there are several volumes, but we have the instance ID in our clipboard, so let's search for that. And it looks like this one, the Basics Lab, is attached to our instance. So this is the snapshot that we need. So let's highlight this volume, go to Actions, and create snapshot. Description, I'm going to give it a description of Basic Lab, and then I'll create the snapshot. All right, now that that's in progress, let's go over to snapshots and see how that's going. And you'll notice right now, it's at 2%. You can see that with the progress meter down here or the progress meter up here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this video until that snapshot is created. And it looks like that snapshot is available. So let's go ahead and make an Amazon machine image out of the snapshot. We'll do that by highlighting the snapshot, clicking Actions, and clicking Create Image. For the name, I'm just going to give it Basics Lab again. The description can be the same. And because you weren't required to mess with the configuration or change any settings, then all of this is going to be just fine. We're also going to leave it at the same size as the original EBS volume, and we'll hit Create. And that's it. So we're going to view the pending image just to see how it's doing. And it looks like that image is ready for us to use. And let's test that out by going to the dashboard, clicking Launch Instance, and then clicking on My AMIs. And you'll see there it is. We have the Basics Lab AMI. Let's use that to launch our instance. Once again, I'm going to leave it all on free tier eligible. And you'll notice that because we made it a snapshot of a different T1 micro, the only type available to us here is instances from the micro instances family. Instance details, everything default is just fine. Add storage, looks fine. Tags, security group, I'm going to launch it into the same security group that we created earlier so that I can quickly test SSH access to it. Review and launch, and launch. I'm going to choose the same EC2 key pair and launch the instance. And once again, this is going to take just a moment, so I'm going to place this video on a brief pause. All right, it looks like that instance is ready. So, as our final test, let's go ahead and try to connect to that one as well. I'll grab our terminal and run the command. Uh-oh, something didn't end up in the clipboard like it was supposed to, so let's try this again. There we go. And SSHing into the instance that we created using the Amazon machine image that we created on our end. And we're in, which means we have successfully gone through this lab. So once again, what we did for this lab is we created an EC2 instance using any type we wanted. We associated it with a new security group that we created that only allows SSH access from our IP address. We then created a snapshot of the EBS attached to that instance and used that snapshot to create a new Amazon machine image. And then finally, we created a brand new EC2 instance using our custom-made Amazon machine image. And that'll wrap it up for this first lab on EC2 basics. So if all of that made sense, feel free to move on.